Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Kiwi Talkz. I'm honored to be speaking to fellow businesswoman, performance coach, boxer, and host of the Roll with the Punches podcast, Tiffany Cook, who is talking to me from Melbourne. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I always enjoy talking to Australians because, you guys are like our cousins or brothers or sisters or whatever.
I know, right? I know. I've got a few faves over there in New Zealand. I'm quite partial, though I've never been there myself. So when the world opens up, I'm gonna have to get my act together and come and visit.
Yeah. When these lockdowns stop happening, when normality somewhat returns.
Whatever that is anymore.
Yeah. It seems like that at the moment, eh? So, tell me how you got into boxing. I wanna know this. Like, how did it all happen?
Well, very accidentally, Reece. Very accidentally. I was 29, and I'd been to this talk on resilience, this little seminar, and it was held up above a gym. And after the seminar, we went downstairs to have a look at the facility. There was this like functional movement facility. It was all very AstroTurf and fancy. And underneath that facility, there was a basement boxing gym, and they had this poster on the wall and obviously I'd just been fueled with an hour's worth of talk on mental resilience. And there was this poster on the wall with a couple of dudes in suits and boxing gloves on, and it was advertising a Zero to Hero executive fight club where anyone could step into the ring. You get 12 weeks training. They put on a professional fight night, gets aired on Foxtel. It was all the bells and whistles, and I was just a bit of a show off, to be honest. I was like, do chicks do this? If chicks can do this, I definitely want to do this. So I jumped in head first, and I tell you what, it was more than what I bargained for.
I bet. Because I've always wondered, what it's like to be punched in the face. Like, you get punched in the face, and obviously it hurts, but knowing you're going into a situation where you're going to get punched in the face.
Yeah,
how do you prepare for it?
It was really interesting. So I've got a big mouth, or I had a big mouth back then. I guess I still do. I just use it differently. But I told everybody, because obviously it's a big corporate fight night, and I wanted all my people there. People had to buy, $250 tickets to sit at a black tie event. So I told everybody that I'm having this fight, and you all got to come and watch it. I sold all these tickets, and I remember a couple of weeks in, we're doing the training, and we're partnered up. We're all mates in the training. We're partnered up, and we had to have our gloves sitting on our cheeks, and we had to start, learn how to roll with the punches. Funnily enough, we had to learn how to roll with the punches. So we start floating our gloves out to our partner's face, and and then learning how to catch the glove and turn your head and brace for it and just get used to that. And oh my God, I had a knot in my throat the whole session. I thought I couldn't keep my eyes open. I couldn't keep my eyes looking forward. All I wanted to do was burst into tears, because I just felt it was so confronting, but I couldn't control my reactions to it. And it was so unexpected. And I remember just thinking, as soon as this class finishes, I am just hightailing it straight out of the gym. I'm going to sit in my car, and I'm going to bawl my eyes out where no one can see me. Fortunately, that subsided, and I didn't do that. But it was... It's the stuff that it's so unexpected how you react to things, because the stuff that was hard and the stuff that was confronting, when we finally stepped in and actually did some sparring, that was nothing. That was exhilarating. I didn't feel the punches. That was a great feeling. It's the anticipation leading up to it. It's when you're processing it at slow speed, and you have all these expectations, and nothing's familiar, especially when I'd never boxed before. So everything that we're learning about technique, I coach boxing now, and you forget when you know a skill, like we walk without thinking. But when we're children, we're learning to balance, and we're learning to, how to pick our feet up and place our feet, and all of these things that we have to focus on. that's what you have to do when you're boxing. So when you have to think like that, it's so overwhelming. It's like you don't even know what to focus your attention on.
Yeah. Makes sense. Do you have to teach a lot of the students or the participants like psychology as well? Because there's so much psychology that's involved, and teaching people to not freak out and just kind of stay focused and not to be too much in here.
Yeah, it is such a psychological game, and that's what I fell in love with after I did that first fight. I said the day of the fight, I woke up after an hour's sleep. The anxiety hit me the night before the fight, of course. Up until then, I was like, we're cool. It's all right. I don't even feel nervous. And then the night before, I was like, oh, what's this? Oh, we're not sleeping all night. So I had an hour's sleep. I got up the next day. I had to pick Mum up from the airport because she was coming to watch. I couldn't converse with her. I had no social skills. I was just in a heightened state of fight and flight and arousal for the whole day. And I remember saying, I'll never, ever do anything like this again. Like the way that I feel today, there's just nothing in the world that could possibly be worth feeling this way, and I'll never do it again. And then coming out the other side of the fight was so 10 times that feeling on the other side. Like that feeling was gone. And I said, get me, like, when's the next one? Get me back in there. But the psychology of it, even then after you have another fight, and it's almost, there's a real balance between, like ignorance is bliss at first, because you go in and you don't overthink things. You're in the moment in a different way. But as all of these skills start to form and you become aware of them, then you'll start thinking and judging them, and there's more room in your thinking and your conscious mind to actually judge and criticize and know, rather than just being there flailing your arms and being in the moment. Like that was my biggest challenge, especially I had 3 years off, and I was fighting back in 2019 after a break, and just the level of focus and control that was the biggest challenge. How much arousal do we need to perform? How much do I need to think to get an outcome? Or how do I access flow? Or how much does the technique matter? Or how much does just the mindset and the feeling and the energy matter? It's such a cocktail, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Do you have to kind of become impervious to pain? Or do you just smash a whole bunch of painkillers after a fight?
It's funny, I definitely never felt the pain. I never felt, I know I got hit a lot. Like I remember the first fight, and defense was never my strong point. My strong point was just absolute work rate and heart. And I remember the first fight I reckon it was 20 seconds. It was probably 10. I don't know. It felt like 10 minutes. I'm in there the first time, flailing my arms in the first round. And I just remember thinking, this is so overwhelmingly hard. Do I really want to do this? Like, this is hard already. And I've got another 3 rounds to go. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to be able to keep up this pace that I'm working at. I think I should chill out a bit and just pick my shots or what. And when I tried that tact, it was just get smashed in the face, get smashed. I was like, okay, well, that's not working. We're going to have to just keep the work rate up. So, but it's funny because especially for the first handful of fights I had, I would just toddle back I had no idea of my performance or what winning or losing would feel like. I would just toddle back to the ring and ask how that went. How did that go? Did I win or did I look like, I don't know, because you just get hit, and I wasn't even aware of the getting hit because my focus was on what I was doing and the punches I was throwing, and it's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's and over the years it changed. There was a lot of stuff for me, really personal stuff and growth and development that came out of that sport for me. And working through that stuff. And that's what makes me so passionate about it, because I found, like I always say now, I met a version of me I realised I never knew when I stepped in that ring. And over the first couple of years of competing, I started, well, for a start, I questioned, because I was never someone that did anything. I was one of those fixed mindset people without even knowing what that meant back then. It was like, if someone told me I was good and talented at something and I would win it, then I would do it. Like, so at school, I never trained, but I was great at sprinting and some of the athletics carnivals, so I would do that. And if I was winning a sport or good at it, I'd play it. But if I wasn't, I wouldn't work to be good at it. You know what I mean? So when I stepped into this boxing ring, and those 12 weeks, it was discomfort, your inner critic, it was fear, it was all these emotions I'd never felt before, and just literally feeling like the worst person in that gym, feeling so uncoordinated and so behind everybody else. And obviously we all kind of feel like that a lot of the time to a certain varying degrees. But I just couldn't understand why I kept going. I was like, why do I want to keep doing this? Because I was a on to the next shiny object type of person. And this sport, I kept going back. But at the same time, it made me ask kind of big questions about myself. Like, why do people keep asking me if getting punched in the face is scary, and why am I not scared of that, and why am I so brave and tough and all of this? And I was like, what does scare me then, and why am I not scared of that? And then, stuff started coming up, all the personal stuff, and I started looking at that. So I realized that I'd had childhood trauma that I had suppressed my entire life and reframed, and I had developed coping mechanisms. And when you asked about pain, like that was one. I didn't feel emotions or pain, so I could dissociate from that. So when I was in the boxing ring, and I didn't realize it for a couple of years, but I remember one moment when one of the coaches, we were doing drills, we were doing some exercise, and I looked at one of the coaches and I said, I've got nothing left. And he goes, really? You don't even look like you're trying. You don't even look like you're working hard. Because my poker face ability, that ability that no one will ever see what I'm feeling, and almost to a degree, I won't feel what I'm feeling. So in terms of the emotional reactions to what was happening to me inside the boxing ring when someone's hitting me, there was no space for me to feel in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It makes sense. And it makes you a better boxer as a result if you can do that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it's a good quality to have in terms of that space.
Yeah, well, it's a good quality. Interesting. It's a good quality to have, but it made me, like I said, it made me question all of those personal traits. And then, my theory was I've got all these things that for 29 years I've framed very positively, strength, independence, resilience, this, that, and I was like, I think that, they're all just a mask for what's underneath. And unfortunately, or fortunately, but sometimes it felt like unfortunately, I'd peeled the lid off that and seen that what was underneath wasn't exactly the case. And you can never put that lid back on. So, especially with that 3 years, so I quit my job within 2 years and decided to be a boxing coach because I absolutely adored it that much and was really connecting with people. So I did that. And then for 3 years, I also, not long after doing that, I'd injured my shoulder. So I had to have a break, which was the start of that 3 years of competing. And over that time, I did a lot of the emotional work. I did a lot of therapy, and I did a lot of, about the stuff that I'd remembered and the stuff that I wanted to work on, and the things that, they're great coping mechanisms in the boxing ring. But if you can't connect to your own emotions in life, then you're just putting a wall up. Look, I had the hugest wall up between me and everyone in life. And, even to the point of realizing, in my 30s, I remember hanging out with my dad one day and we were talking. I was cooking dinner and he said something, and he said, he goes, "Oh, there's this guy at work that's about your age. I think you'd get along." And I was like,
Parents.
Dad, I'm not dating you, mate. Dad's a wharfie. Imagine someone of a wharfie telling you, trying to, Dad, come on. But yeah, I was like, Dad, no, mate, I'm not dating you, mate. And he's like, oh. I go, Dad, I'm 30-something, whatever I was. I'm 30-something. I've been single for 29 of those years and pretty much left it at that. Toddles back into the kitchen after a few minutes, looking all, like he's been thinking about it. He goes, I just thought that you were so outgoing and so confident. And that was the moment I realized that this bravado front that I believed for a long time, I was like, not only do I not really know myself underneath all that crap, neither does my dad. And the people that are supposedly closest to me, the people that know me, they don't even know me. Like, you can't go through life like that.
So was it like walking through life carrying a massive bag of rocks?
Oh,
unknowingly,
absolutely.
yeah. But in hindsight, you might notice it, but at the time, you probably don't realize that you're carrying a bag of rocks, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I said in those early days, it was like ignorance was bliss. Like, before I realized that all that stuff was a bit of a front, I'd framed it really positively, and but where it I find that where it comes crashing down is if you don't address your shit, you are running from it. So what I'd noticed, and the reason it really came to a head for me, a couple of years in, I was training I was just training like crazy, and training became my thing. And I was never really into fitness. I was always a busy person, but was never really into fitness before that. So I start doing all this physical training, and I'm working full time and really running myself down. But, once you hit your 30s, you're not bloody 20 anymore, or you're not 18, you can't train every single day of your life and sustain a job and have all the stresses of being an adult. And,
Totally.
So I just felt like, okay, I see that a lot of the drive for some of this stuff is suppressing stuff from coming up. It's that when I stopped, when my body needed to rest and I let it, or I went for, I remember going for some walks in St Kilda. I'd go for a walk, and next minute I would be crying my eyes out, walking down the street, walking down St Kilda Road by myself overnight, and just in horrific tears, and not have a clue what I was crying about. I was like, I don't even know what's wrong. I don't even know what I'm crying about right now. There was all this emotion, and my body was, normally I could just go and thrash a workout. But I just felt like when I stopped and when I paused, there was all this sadness underneath. And it was like, I realized you don't physically or emotionally have the energy to keep running away and distracting yourself and, digging the hole deeper, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. So did you go see a therapist shortly after that? Was that the revelation point, and you're like, oh, maybe I should go see someone about this?
Yeah, I remember walking with a mate of mine who happened to be a clinical psychologist.
Oh, that's great. That's handy.
I know, how handy is that? And I go to her, and this is like the mask I wear. So I go, if somebody had this experience as a child, and because I Dr. Googled myself, and I was like, all right, very logical.
That's what everyone does.
Happened. Yep, I'm just going to go and see if these symptoms match up. Yep, that's definitely what I'm experiencing now. So then I thought I'll throw it out there to my mate, and I asked her, and I remember her going, "Oh, mate, nah, they wouldn't have dealt with anything. That like her response was so abrupt. And a couple of weeks later, she goes to me, "Oh, were you talking about so and so?" And I was like, "Oh no, I was actually talking about myself." And she, as you can imagine, was, "Oh, if I knew that, I would have responded very differently." But I remember she referred me to someone. But, to be honest, it took a few therapists before I found and clicked and did some work. I feel like I was such a tough client, because I went in there with the logic and I was like, all right, Michael, got this going on. This happened. And he's like, right. I just was in for the answer. Like, all right, I'm here. I've done all the hard work because I've put all the pieces together. I'm telling you. So now I've got this issue. So can you just give me the pill, fix it?
Yeah.
Do that thing.
I've been to therapy, so I understand it, right? Because they have to kind of dig really deep to try and get to the fundamental core of what the problem is. It's not a simple fact of just looking at what's on the surface. You got to dig really, really deep.
Yeah. And there's so many different types of therapists and therapies. Like I ended up going to a few over time, and it's certainly interesting. But the thing I loved about boxing and love about boxing was in that 3-year period, and I went back in 2019, and I'd done this work. So I'd made huge changes to how I was with emotions and relationships and life and knowing myself. And one of the first things I thought was, what's going to happen? Like, what's going to happen to Tiff the boxer? Because when I was choosing to do this work, I was like, oh, that's going to change you as a fighter, because that coping mechanism made you strong in the boxing ring. And then if you change this part of yourself, well, what's that going to do to that girl that's got that strength in the boxing ring?
Right. Yeah. You might lose that ability or that skill in particular.
Yeah. And went back in 2019 and absolutely felt the change. And that's what I love about the sport of boxing, is you get to know your reactions and your responses to things before the conscious mind kicks in. When you're at your most primal, you're under threat, you have decisions to make, and you soon find out who you are and how you feel about yourself and how you tackle things. And there's obvious ebbs and flows in that from just the standpoint of mindset. But I would step out of the ring or step out of training sessions, and the night after, or each for a couple of hours after training, I just loved the process of the connections that I would make from what I just felt and seen happen inside that ring, inside that environment.
Yeah. So can you see on some of the people that you coach, them having a front up, they got the mask on, the poker face on? Can you kind of sense that now when other people that you're coaching have it? Yeah,
I guess I don't coach fighters now. I spent a couple of years coaching a lot of the fighters that were doing the corporate boxing challenge that we would do, so that was awesome. But what I do now is I run a workshop. It's a 4-week workshop, and I love it's a really good tribe of people, and we go for breakfast afterwards. But what I love about it is just opening up the ability to connect the body with the mind and control, and then open up those types of conversations at the same time. So people really, for me, that's the connection. And I think as soon as one person does it, as soon as one person lets their guard down, obviously not in the boxing ring, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah, no, that's not good.
But as soon as, for example, I just last week dropped an episode on my podcast that ended up at the halfway point becoming a very vulnerable, very confronting therapy session, because he was a clinical psychologist, on me in my childhood. Yeah, and it was a big one, and because it actually, I didn't realise at the time, but it took me 2 weeks before I opened the file to edit it, and it took another 2 weeks before I posted it online, and it was really well connected by people. And this is what I find is, as soon as you are yourself and acknowledge the mask and acknowledge the flaws and acknowledge the challenges, everyone else just goes, oh, me too. Oh, right. Like everyone, the amount of messages and emails that I got of people saying, he could have been talking about me then. I relate to that. That's the most powerful episode. And yeah, I feel like the boxing ring's an opportunity for that, right? Because for me, it's a metaphor. We stand in there and we do stuff with our body, and we can kind of wear the mask of boxing. But also it's very transparent. There's not much of a mask that you can wear in boxing.
That is so true. That is true. So I saw that you studied conscious hypnosis.
Yes.
So can you tell me exactly what that is? Is it hypnosis as in the typical media portrayed hypnosis, or is it something different?
Well, it is, yeah. It's the typical media one, but when you talk about typical media like stage hypnosis, that's kind of a very different thing.
Yeah.
It was a part of a course I did, and I don't do hypnosis, but I'm interested. I did NLP courses, and because they were a lot of the tactics that were used on me. And what was really powerful is when I went and did NLP as a qualification, I realised the science behind what I'd experienced. I'd had a life coach before, and they'd done this NLP on me, and I thought it was weird. So weird. I was like...
I'll just quickly say that NLP is Neuro-Linguistic Programming, right?
Thank you. And I should have said that, shouldn't I?
All right, keep going.
Yeah. So I was like, I remember doing it years and years ago. I was like, this is so weird. Like, I don't even know if I'm doing it right. And, I'm paying hundreds of dollars to this guy to do this stuff with me, and I'm just thinking, I don't know, I'm just kind of agreeing with you. I don't even know what this is. It's so weird. But I remember, because when you do things like timeline therapy, and what you could do is remove negative emotions from, basically, for anyone that doesn't know it, from the first point. So a lot of the emotional turmoil we have now, it might stem from an initial event, and then it carries through in life, and we kind of build on it. So we find that first point of where that emotion became a really heightened thing that we haven't gotten over the experience of, and we kind of make amends with that in this imaginative way. It's really weird. Anyway, we'd done that, and when you do it, the emotions, you do it in a specific order. So normally you'll do anger first, and underneath anger there will be, say, sadness, grief, shame. There will be all of the other emotions, but you do it in a specific order, which is important. Anyway, I used to be, when I was growing up, I'm a Taurus, so I'm fiery, and I was always a bit fiery and outspoken, and people used to joke that they would call me the angry bird, and it was always in a joking manner, but I would be quite fiery and reactive. And when I had those kind of, like I told you about, the emotional breakdowns, what I would notice when that was brewing, all right, because I didn't want to feel the emotions of whatever was underneath it. For me, anger was the tool that gave me control over something, and I could project that. So I think of times when I was getting wound up and pissed off about something, and I'd get irritated at people around me for no reason at all. But you'd pick something and be like, that person's annoying because of this, and there's all this anger. So I always knew that anger was kind of my only emotion. And when I did the course, we did the timeline therapy, we practiced on each other, and when we were doing it, and this was years later, and I remember them saying, well, we'll work on anger, and I was like, I don't really feel like anger. I don't really feel like I might go do a different emotion. And then I went, oh my God, anger used to be, I've never thought about that since, but I feel like he'd gone through that process with me and it had made such a profound change. And then I was like, that's why I felt so much more access to the other really uncomfortable feelings that were underneath the anger of, maybe shame and loneliness and whatever else there was. But it made so much sense because I was like, oh, that's why I've had some, ups and downs, and that's really interesting to me. But the science behind that NLP, I loved. I love neuroscience. I love science behind things. I like a bit of woo-woo, but I only like woo-woo if I can go and look at the science and be like, right, I get that.
Right, so it has to be scientifically based before you'll take it on board, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the flaky, hokey pokey magic.
Yeah.
Wizardry.
Yeah. I'm a little bit like that. I'm like, okay, I like this. I like the idea of it, but I need to go and see that there is science behind what's happening. And if you give me that, happy days.
Did you used to wear black a lot?
I live in Melbourne, bro. Yeah, I wear black all the time. Black is my natural habitat.
Okay, the reason why I say it is because there's, I don't know the exact science about it, but if you think about if you wear black, right, and the sun, if you're wearing black and it's real sunny, you get hot quicker. They say it's the same with energy. So you absorb negative energy if you're wearing black.
Ooh.
Yeah. The way...
Really?
Yeah. I should find the link and send it to you.
Please do.
And I'm saying this while I'm wearing black, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, so which kind of makes sense, right? I mean, because it's energy, so you absorb it. But yeah, that's why I thought I'd ask. I was like, did you wear a lot of black? Because I know a lot of people that in my circle that get quite angry, they wear a lot of black. Now, could just be a coincidence.
I always wore quite because I worked in corporate, so it was obviously black pants and things. But I was always wear quite bright colours. So it wasn't full black.
Angry... It's not like you were goth or anything, and like black.
No, definitely wasn't goth. Definitely, I was more the opposite. Like when I was 16, I was the girl that peroxided my hair and put pink fudge in it and walked around with pink hair. Like I was bright.
Right.
I wasn't angry in the way that you would. I was fun angry, but I would use that anger as a tool, more like just snappy, like fun aggressive, if that's a thing. Not like, oh God, stay away from her. She's always so angry. Just flighty and reactive.
Right, but could that be misinterpreted? Even though you're fun, angry, would people be like,
yeah, for sure. And I would love to go back in time, clone myself, go back in time and have a conversation with that person and see what I thought of them and see what I saw in them now. Like, it's so interesting. Even when we talk about the mask, like I said, when I was in Tassie, I had this spiky hair that was bright pink. I rode a motorbike. Everything had to stand out and I was very shy, and I definitely couldn't have spoken on a podcast or put myself out in front of people and spoke. I was very shy, but I used this look that was unique. It was almost like my voice to say, hey, I'm really different. I'm really, I'm bold. I'm colourful. I'm bright. I'm cool. But I didn't have the confidence to actually say that. So I was using this really out there kind of look to say that on my behalf. And I felt that. I felt when I was in Melbourne at some point and I dyed my hair brown again, and I just felt like, I remember thinking, oh, I never realised that was something I needed, but I don't feel like I need that look anymore.
Yeah. When you're different, though, I'd imagine there'd still be a part of you that wants to feel accepted and included, right?
Oh,
but it's frustrating because you're like, why am I so different? Why do I feel so different to everyone else? And I feel like I'm not included, like I don't belong here.
Yeah.
So
I never felt. I don't think I ever felt like I didn't belong. I just felt like I wanted to be, center of attention. I wanted to be the person, the happy. I was a happy person. It sounds funny because now I'm like, you're saying you're angry, but you're happy. I was a happy person. I was a fun person. I was always, but there were, it was those extremes of, or just not really letting myself be who I was underneath, not being vulnerable with people. So everything was to be what I thought people would want in a person, in a relationship, in a friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense. I mean, you wear a lot of hats. Like, was that always the plan to, like, start a podcast and...
That was never the plan. That was never the plan. Do you know when that became a plan? That became a plan 5 minutes before I had a podcast. That happened in the middle of lockdown, and I'd started... I worked in gym, so I got a couple of gyms.
Yeah. So
we got locked down for that 4-month period. My gyms got closed. My income got stopped. I was like, that's not ideal. Yeah. But I got an opportunity to put together a program to train our Victorian ambulance paramedics online. And as a part of that program, I train them every morning, and then on Friday afternoons, I put together a Feel Good Friday kind of well-being hangout sort of session. Within 2 weeks, I started bringing in guests, and then I put together a 6-week lineup of guests, and I was like, whoa, I got like $20,000-$30,000 worth of guest speakers lined up here. And that seed was there. Then I was like, oh, maybe I'll keep the audio for that, because they were all on Zoom recorded. But maybe I'll keep the audio, and when I've done 20 or 30, I'll start rolling them out weekly, and then I'll practice getting better at this, and then maybe I can do a podcast. And of course, me being me, I borrowed some podcasting gear and asked one of my guests to meet me at the gym when we were out of lockdown, obviously, meet me at the gym and practice recording a session with me. And on the way there, I thought of the name Roll with the Punches. And when I got there, I had the microphones and the ring light, and I took a selfie in front of the backdrop, which is actually my cover art now. And because I thought of an awesome name and took an awesome selfie, I posted it. I was like, there's a new podcast, guys. At that point, I had no idea how podcasts worked, or how you get whatever that little black box was, which I now know is a Zoom interface. I had no idea how I get the sound off of that and into Apple iTunes.
Oh, well, it's all a learning curve. I mean, everything that you've done, right? I mean, you've done very well. So obviously, this is just the next part of that book they call life.
And it was so, like I said, and obviously COVID was hard, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, because it made me change what I'm doing. It made me evaluate and reflect and start something new in a situation. And the beauty of it was, I mean, the podcast became ridiculously successful so fast, and I was like, I didn't plan this. All I wanted was, I saw an opportunity to improve my communication skills and to leverage that I could network at a higher level. I've always done business networking, and that served me really well. But I was like, right now I'm networking with world-renowned guests. And while I have the opportunity to do that by using the platform of the paramedics, being able to introduce myself to speakers that would speak to them and then build a relationship, I was like, this is great. They're two things that are really important to me, so I'll do that. And that's all I focused on. And then next minute the podcast went well, and I was like, oh, isn't it amazing when you find something? And I loved it. I even love editing the conversations. And when you love what you're doing and you're passionate about it, and I don't think I would have had that success if I had have planned that success.
Makes sense.
Which was amazing to me. It was a lesson in itself. And I wouldn't have had the time off. But I had no income. I had no choice. I was allowed outside the house for 1 hour a day. So it was, I just busied myself. And it was funny because as I was busying myself, obviously because of my track record, I spent a lot of time going, is this awesome attitude that you've got and this love of what you're doing. Is this a coping mechanism, and is this a mask? Like, I was very skeptical as to whether I was going to wake up one day and have a breakdown and be like, oh, it was just another coping mechanism, or it was just another, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, has the therapy worked, Reece, or...
Well, you seem very happy and very bubbly, and yeah, you're glowing, so that's a good sign. It's a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah. How long's your podcast been going?
2 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so I'm just about to hit 100 episodes. So long time. And as you've said, like, it's one of those things. Just with me, when I started, I didn't know. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I kind of knew audio stuff because I came from that background. But in terms of actually making one, like, yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing here. And you kind of just pivot and adapt where need be. You listen to feedback. You take it on board. You look at, like, analytics and what works and what doesn't. And even when I'm editing, you know, I'll listen to myself back and be like, nah, I shouldn't have said that, or I fumbled words there, or whatever, right? Because I don't know about you, but, like, I'm my own worst critic. Like, I just see the flaws in everything that I do. And I have to take a step back sometimes, and sometimes even my partner has to be like, hey, no, you're doing pretty well. You've done this, this, and this. Yeah.
What lights you up about the podcast, or what has been the biggest wins for you?
I think it's just getting to talk to people that I wouldn't necessarily get to talk to.
Yeah.
Because I'm exposed to so many different people, and you learn about so many different ways of life, and you actually realize quite quickly how ignorant you are about a lot of things.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You, like, talk to people and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know that. I wasn't even comprehending that in my mind, right? So, like, the more you do it and the more you're exposed to it, you realize a lot of things about yourself and about the world. I mean, particularly, you know, New Zealand, right? There's like 5 million people here. You know, we don't, I mean, and even Australia to a certain extent, right? We're both at the bottom of the world. And, you know, the Northern Hemisphere is completely different. I mean, most of the population lived there. Wars and chaos and all that jazz. And we kind of sit here off to the side, just doing our own thing, because New Zealand and Australia's cultures are quite similar. If we're talking about the world sense, I think if there's two countries that are culturally similar, it's Australia and New Zealand. A lot of tourism and back and forth in terms of work, but, like, say America is very different to Canada, even though they're neighbours. So yeah, I think it's quite easy to get caught in your bubble sometimes. So it's good to have that popped now and then.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had that as well, right?
Yeah. I remember, I reckon it was 3 or 4 months in, thinking and saying, I've learned more than I think any course could have told me. Like,
totally.
The learning and the evolution as a human, that's why I don't mind editing. I love the editing process and the time, like the monotonous time that's involved in producing a podcast.
Yeah.
But I value it so much because, I mean, I can't even really gauge how much I'm learning, but sometimes it wasn't that long ago. I was editing an episode and I realised that there were probably 3 or 4 times that I've grabbed my phone in the middle of editing and Googled a word that I've said and gone, can I just check that I'm actually using that correctly? And I'm like, oh, I am. Where the hell have I picked up all this language? Like, all of a sudden I'm articulating things differently and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And I remember at the start, at first there were, like I said, I love the science of things, but I hate doing courses. I hate doing long courses. I get really sick of it really easy. Yeah, so I was wanting to study. I was like, I'd like to study that more. I'd like to retain certain information. Like, I'd like to study more neuroscience. I'd like to know more. I don't even think like that anymore because I'm just learning every day. It's sinking in more than any course would, and I don't even have that thought anymore.
Are you a visual learner, or how do you learn? Because like I learn through visuals or through repetition, right? If you give me a whole bunch of words to just read, unless I can somehow put some image to it, it's very hard for me to retain it. Like I'm very much a visual learner. I'm just wondering if you're similar.
I'm a bit visual, but a bit. I like listening. I like audio. I like to get audiobooks and podcasts. I find that I learn a lot more and retain a lot more because I guess I can do that while I'm doing something or walking or moving my body a little bit. If I'm reading a book, do you ever get that thing where you read a book and you finish your page and you're like, oh, I've scanned the words, but I have actually not read this book. And when I was younger, I would do that all the time. I would restart a book 3 times because I'd get pages in and be like, I haven't been reading at all. I've been daydreaming at the same time. So I feel like that process of I can plug it into my ears, I can walk the dog, I'm actually more inclined to listen because there's movement in my body or there's other things that just enough to focus on to let the information go in.
Fair enough. I did want to ask about your fitness regime. I want to know.
Oh, right.
Well, yeah. I want to know. I want to know what you do. I want to know what your nutrition is.
Well, obviously when I was boxing, it was very heavily boxing. When I was competing, I would train 2 hours every afternoon, and my trainer was pretty brutal, so that would just be like more often than not, that would be an hour straight of 3-minute rounds of sparring. Like it was just, old school.
Yeah.
These days I do a lot of body. I do a variety of things. I've hung up the gloves now because the time commitment with everything else I'm doing is just not feasible, and I know that whenever I compete, I'm all in to the detriment of anything else. And fortunately, I was having that thought, and one of my friends who does rock climbing got me into rock climbing, and it was the first time that I felt, remember that first day of the fight that I felt, and I couldn't sleep, and I had that it's the first time I've felt that in my body since, to that level. It's this clinging to a rock face. So I found that, there's another place I can access that. There's another place that I can get to know Tiff under extreme duress, clinging to a wall. So I like doing a bit of rock climbing now. I do a lot of body weight training, of a style of training called Zoo. It's like primal groundwork. I love it. It's really hard, kind of brutal, but amazing for your body and your joints. I love a variety of stuff now. Obviously still adore punching. Not people in the face now, but punching the pads at least. But yeah, I do a bit of everything. I'll do something every day because I love it. Nutrition-wise, currently and often when I do feel much better, I do intermittent fasting.
Nice.
And really, I love the health benefits of that and the cognitive benefits of that. And every time that I do it, I just feel good, and it improves my behaviour around and relationship with food.
It's so intertwined. Like food is so intertwined with how you feel and your mood. And I think it's only as of late that people are really starting to come around to this and starting to realise how much of an important factor it is.
Yes. Yeah. And food and movement hand in hand. Like if you injure yourself and can't train, watch how quickly it affects your food. It's almost impossible to stay on track with your food when your movement is taken from you. Yeah. Because the body knows and the brain know what is going to access and release certain neurochemistry. Dopamine, serotonin. And when an activity that releases that is taken from us and we can now no longer go and box and get those feel-good hormones, well, the body's like, it's all good, I got you, mate. Grab a Freddo frog. We got this. Same feeling. So, and like I said, so sometimes training is a coping mechanism. So when we can't cope, when that's taken from us, we can't cope, then we go for food because food's comfort. Like, what do we do when we're kids? We throw something in our mouth every time we're upset. So it's only reasonable to understand that that's going to be a lifelong pattern for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think as well as, like, exercising is a good coping mechanism. And it's also better than, saying, turning to a substance, whether it's food or alcohol or some sort of drug. Because some people don't know how to deal with their emotions properly, and so they turn to a substance as a way of coping with it. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I do think it's important that you eat the right food. So what, fruits, vegetables? Is there any foods that you actively avoid? It's funny, I never thought I had an amazing diet, and then I kind of realised that even over the years before I was into fitness, my knowledge had evolved and my eating had evolved, and it's not until I, at one point, was eating with other people and other friends that weren't into fitness that I was like, God, I'm very hard on myself because I've got a massive sweet tooth, so I love, like, far out. Don't leave your block of chocolate lying around anywhere near me because it won't survive. But in terms of, like lean meat and veg, stir fries, I'm very much a meat and veg type person. I don't have a lot of pastas and things like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I studied epigenetics last year, so I'm an epigenetic coach too, and through that I learned a lot. And often epigenetically we tend to lean towards eating and moving and living the way that our biology suits. But because we have such a load of information to think about, talk about now, like, oh, my best mate did this and they got results. So we start overriding the system. We don't listen to our bodies the same way.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's not a one size fits all when it comes to diet, right? I mean, there's some foods that your body might like, and then for another person it might cause a reaction or whatnot. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in the epigenetic coaching, there's 60% of people in Australia, I don't know, it could be worldwide, I can't remember, 60% of people are a type called a diplomat. And there's 6 health types. We give them names just to make it easier to bloody process for people.
Yeah.
Diplomats are your standard non-responders in training programs. So, you get 10 people doing a HIIT program, give them the same food, the same training, they go in every day, they're not responding, and we're like, oh, you're obviously not following the diet. All you need to do is take that training session. They're night owls. They shouldn't train early. No stress on the body early in the morning. It puts them in a worse health state. So you take that training, you put it in the afternoon, change nothing else, and they'll get results. So things like that, how you eat, how you live, how you socialise, all of that stuff, it's actually incredible, the things that you can change that will enhance your performance, decrease your stress, improve results.
It's an acquired skill, though, to become self-aware as well when your body's telling you something, because it's basically it's a filtering system, right? Like, it tells 100%. It actually tells you when something's wrong, but sometimes you're just so oblivious to it. Like, if you smoke a cigarette, right, the first time you do it, it's like, right? Because it's your body telling you, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, yeah, so it's trying to filter it out. And sometimes it's the same with food, right? Like, say if you ate, I don't know, if you're like a celiac or something and you ate gluten and then you felt bloated afterwards, or you have a lot of gas or something. Like, I think some people are just like, oh, yeah, that's just normal. And then
100%.
Yeah. Sometimes you need someone to point it out to you. Yeah.
It's really funny. A lot of the people that I've coached, and there'll be two main responses to certain things. I'll be like, eat like this, train like this is the best for you. And people will either say, oh, yeah, I tend to already, like those diplomats, they will often already know inherently, I'm not a morning person. I don't have breakfast till 10 anyway. I don't get up, I stay up a bit later. I don't get up early. Or there'll be a time in their life where they have, and they'll go, oh, I used to and I felt really good. And it's funny because, well, why aren't you now? So you're coming for help. You've already got this proven track record that this once worked.
Yeah, so
but
why
now
not?
You're here.
Yeah,
now you're here asking me for the magic pill. Like, the magic pill is exactly what you did before when you felt it. But it's an art. It is, like you said, it's an art because our body speaks to us in a lot of ways, and especially when it comes to food, you're talking about biochemical responses. You're talking about emotional responses and coping mechanisms. Like, am I eating because I'm actually hungry? Do I get hungry and anxious because I'm eating high sugar foods and high carb foods that are giving me peaks and troughs in my blood sugar? And then it's because I used to eat like that. So despite eating really healthy, I'd often have those, healthy treats. So, but the energy, you look at the energy release of the types of foods I was eating, it was up and down. And of course, I was always peaking and troughing with energy.
And sometimes what you eat, it can actually have an effect later. So, you know much about like Enema Kits? So
Anemic?
Yeah, well, no, like Enema Kits. So they're like these tubes.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So basically, you stick them up your ass, right? And then it's basically, and they're like these little tubes that you stick up your ass, and then like you basically put all this water up there, and what it does is it sucks all the toxins and some of the food that might not fully come out and get stuck to the sides of like your intestines.
Wow.
In that area, because that can help with that some stuff. Particularly if you're like having fatigue or you're just feeling tired all the time or bloated all the time, that can be one part of it. I mean, there can be other aspects, but yeah.
I had a girl on my show late last year. Oh, it was a ripper of an episode, but she healed or cured, or they don't say that term. She is symptom-free for over 4 or 5 years now of bipolar 1, which is the more severe bipolar. She had debilitating bipolar, suicidal, like awful, awful, awful symptoms. And she tried do-it-yourself poo transplants, fecal transplants.
Is that even a thing? What?
That is a thing. That is getting someone else's poo and transplanting it into your body.
Are you serious? So how does that work?
Serious. Well, she makes a smoothie out of it, and she gets a big tube thing. There's a video she had on it. She was on SBS, and it was
fecal
awesome
transplant. Is that what it's called?
True story.
I gotta write this down
fecal
somewhere.
Transplant.
I'm putting this in my phone. I gotta look at this afterwards. Fecal transplant. Keep going, by the way.
I'll send you the app. She's amazing, but she's one of the first people in the world because bipolar 1 is non-curable, but she hasn't had an episode for a very, very long time, like years. And she's now in some of the scientific journals, and she's now involved in some clinical trials in Melbourne as we speak. So it's incredible. But so like doing that, the things that can heal in terms of autoimmune diseases, because when I was first looking to do an episode on that, weird thing to be scoping out, but I thought that I would speak to someone with an autoimmune condition, and I'd reached out to a couple of speakers that have a business that does it, but they didn't respond. So then I went searching on YouTube, and I found hers, and super excited because a lot of my episodes will touch on people with mental health issues. So I was like, oh, this is so great. And she was just, it's the story. There was another guy. She talked about another guy in Queensland that's doing it, that's done it as well, and has helped his bipolar. And I don't know if I can say it. Oh God, Reece. He makes poo smoothies. He was making poo smoothies, legit. You can put it in a capsule, which they call crapsules, or you can.
This sounds like so insane. Like just listening to this right now, and it's like it's really hard for me to like take this on board. Like I'll obviously have to look into it further because it's like it's fecal matter. Like it's you know what I mean. Like people get viruses and can get sick from like eating poo.
And that's and that's the thing is when they do it, like you have to do, if you were to go down that path, you would have to make sure that the person who you are taking the matter from, it goes through testing, because you could get quite sick if they're carrying anything.
Yeah.
That you're gonna. Yeah. But
so
like, I know that they've done it with people that are obese too. Like because they did it in mice. If you put the feces of obese mice or of lean mice into obese mice, then that changes their weight. They lose weight.
This is so buzzy. I didn't foresee talking to you about feces, but hey, that's the joys of podcasting, right?
We never know where we could go.
It must be a bacteria thing, right? So like if you obviously do the transplant and it does something to your gut bacteria or the bacteria within your body and somehow balance it out, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the gut, I was listening to a podcast the other day, I can't remember who it was, but they were reiterating that the gut speaking to the brain, so the messages from the gut to the brain, because obviously there's a neural network in our gut. So we have 3 brains, so to speak, and by brains I mean neural networks, and one is the brain in our head that we all know of. One is the brain in our heart, so our heart has a neural network that speaks to us, and our gut has a neural network. And they were saying that the network from our gut to our brain is 8 times stronger going that way. So the messages, and then we know that serotonin is produced in the gut. So serotonin, obviously, is the feel-good hormone. So you look at those 2 things, and it really only makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, I don't want to go.
I mean,
I don't want to go flipping crapshules, but
yeah. I mean, the gut's the source of all diseases, I feel. In most cases, or any like with autoimmune, not just autoimmune diseases, but other things as well. But yeah, it always starts in the gut. So yeah, pay close attention to your diet, folks, and your body. Well, hey, I'm going to wrap up there. This has been so amazing. We'll have to catch up in person when I'm in Melbourne.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Sing out.
Yeah. So where's all your social media? Where can everyone follow you and download your podcast and so forth?
I've got a website, which is www.rollwiththepunches.com.au. I've got Roll With The Punches podcast is on Instagram. My personal Instagram is Tiffany & Co. That's Tiffany with a double E. And I'm on Facebook. Hunt me down. I'm everywhere.
That's good. Well, hey, thank you so much for doing this. I very much appreciate it. I've learned a lot, especially about feces. Mind-blowing. It's going to take me a while to fully process this, but it's good nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm gonna find that video and send it to you where because she makes the smoothie right there.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Cool. All right, well, that's the show, everyone. Make sure you share, like, and subscribe. And until next time, stay safe. See you later.